I'll admit something right away. I wasn't supposed to be standing in her living room that night. I was just supposed to fix the leaky faucet under her sink. That's all. A quick job, a polite thank you, maybe a glass of water, and I'd be gone. But the thing about her apartment, it never felt temporary. It always felt like a place you stayed in. Too warm. Too lived in. There were stacks of books on the table, a faint trace of perfume in the curtains, and the soft hum of an old record player in the corner. And then there was her. She opened the door like she hadn't been expecting me to look the way I did. For a moment, her eyes held me a little too long, the way people do when they're surprised. She was in her mid-40s, hair pinned up loosely like she'd given up halfway, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Tired, but still sharp. The kind of tired that had its own beauty. "Faucet," she said, tilting her chin toward the kitchen. Just like that, short, clipped, all business. I nodded, though my hands already felt stupid, heavier than they should have been. Yeah, faucet. I worked in silence, crouched beneath her sink, the sound of dripping filling the quiet between us. But quiet with her wasn't like other kinds of quiet. It had a weight, like something pressing against my chest while I tried not to breathe too loud. From above me, she moved around slowly, like she was half watching. The click of her nails against a mug. The shift of her chair across the tiles. The way she cleared her throat but didn't actually say anything. I knew she wanted to, and I knew I wanted her to. Finally, when I slid out from under the sink, wiping my hands on a rag, she was standing there with 2 glasses of water. "Thanks," I said. "You look good tonight," she said, almost like she hadn't meant to let it slip out. Her eyes darted away, to the shelves, to the window, anywhere but me. Something in me jolted. I don't know if it was boldness or stupidity, but my mouth was moving before I could stop it. "For you, always." The words hung in the air like they didn't belong to either of us. Her hand tightened around the glass. Just a fraction. But I saw it. And she didn't answer right away. That silence was louder than anything else. I should have laughed it off. Joked. Pretended I didn't mean it. Instead, I stood there, waiting for her to turn, to scold, to end the moment before it grew into something it shouldn't. But she didn't. Instead, she set the glass down, carefully, like her movements suddenly mattered more than they should. Then, almost against her own will, she looked at me again. Not the way neighbors look. Not the way people look at someone they've just hired for a small job. No, this was different. Her lips parted, then closed again, as if words had formed but couldn't risk being spoken. She turned her face slightly, but not before I saw the faintest trace of color in her cheeks. I stayed still. The room felt too quiet again, the dripping faucet now fixed, the air thick with something else entirely. And then her hand brushed mine. Accidental. Intentional. Couldn't tell. But it was enough. Enough to make me forget the faucet, forget the rag in my hands, forget every reason I had to walk out of that apartment and never look back. Instead, I found myself looking at her, really looking, and she wasn't pulling away. That was the moment. The one where I knew everything after would feel different. The thing about a line is, you don't realize you've crossed it until you look back and the ground's already gone. Her hand brushed mine, and everything that should have kept me steady. Respect, common sense, the fact that she was at least 20 years older, suddenly felt thin. Too thin to hold on to. She pulled back first, just enough to restore the distance. But the air didn't go back to normal. Couldn't. Cleared my throat. The faucet should be fine now. No more dripping. "Good," she said, though her voice carried a hesitation that wasn't there before. She looked at the sink, at the counter, at the way my rag still dripped faintly with water. Anything but me. It should have ended there. I should have packed my tools, thanked her, left. But instead I found myself noticing the details. Her hair had loosened from its clip, a stray strand resting near her jaw. Her shirt, slightly wrinkled, smelled faintly of coffee and lavender. Her eyes, sharp but tired, kept flicking toward me and away again, like she was holding back a storm. That's when I saw the wine bottle on the counter. Half empty. One glass already used. "You entertaining anyone tonight?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Do I look like I am? I wanted to say you look like you should be. Instead, I just shook my head. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, but it wasn't defensive. It was something closer to holding herself together. It's been a long week, she admitted. I don't usually ask for help with these things. I hate needing anyone. That stopped me. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Soft, almost embarrassed. I wanted to tell her she didn't seem like someone who needed help from anyone. But the words twisted in my throat. Instead, I said, sometimes it's easier, letting someone else hold the weight for a bit. Her eyes lifted to mine, and I swear, in that moment, I could feel the air tilt. Dangerous. That's what it was. She pushed off the counter, walked a little closer than she had to. Close enough that I caught the warmth of her. Close enough that I noticed her hand tighten around her own arm, as though she were bracing herself. Maybe you're right, she said quietly. Then, after a pause that made my pulse stumble, you don't have to leave just yet, do you? The question hit harder than it should have. I swallowed. My body said stay. My head screamed go. But when her hand touched my arm, barely, a light press of her fingers that lingered longer than politeness allowed, I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And before I could answer, before I could ruin it with something reckless, she looked at me in that careful, deliberate way again. Sit with me for a while, she said. And just like that, the ground disappeared beneath me. I sat on her couch like I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't. My tools were still on the kitchen floor, the faucet forgotten, but she didn't seem to care. She sat across from me, one leg tucked under the other, glass of wine in hand, studying me in a way that made the silence unbearable. I couldn't stop noticing things I shouldn't notice. The faint trace of lipstick smudged on the rim of her glass. The way her robe slipped just enough to reveal the line of her collarbone. The quiet strength in her posture, even when she was trying to relax. I don't usually invite people in, she said finally, voice low, deliberate. I don't usually stay, I answered before I thought better of it. Her lips twitched, as if she wanted to call me out, but didn't. Instead, she swirled the wine and asked, "And why are you still here?" I should have had an answer ready. I didn't, because my throat caught. I forced myself to look at the floor, at the faint scratch marks on her wooden table. Anything but her. Because you asked. That earned me a silence thicker than before. I risked a glance. She was watching me, eyes soft, but unreadable. And then, just as I was about to say something stupid, the sound of her phone shattered the moment. A sharp ring. Her eyes flicked to the counter where it buzzed. She didn't move. Are you going to answer it? I asked. She shook her head slowly. No, the phone kept buzzing, kept breaking the quiet, until finally it stopped. She set her glass down, leaned forward, elbows resting on her knees, and with a voice that seemed to slip past her guard, she said, "My sister, she calls every night, thinks I'm lonely." The faint laugh, brittle at the edges. Maybe she's not wrong. I wanted to tell her she wasn't, that she didn't look lonely. She looked strong, magnetic, impossible to ignore. But all I managed was, "You don't seem lonely to me." That made her pause. Really pause. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly, like she was trying to decide whether to believe me. And then it happened. Her knee brushed mine. Just the lightest touch. Accidental, maybe, but neither of us moved away. I felt my pulse in my throat, my chest, my palms. I should have pulled back, shifted, broken the spell. Instead, I froze. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Her lips parted, like she was about to speak, but no words came. The room held its breath. Her knee was still against mine. My hands twitched, restless, wanting to do something reckless. Reach for her, close the distance, prove that this wasn't just in my head. Instead, I said her name softly, almost like a question. She looked at me then, fully, directly, and the air between us cracked like glass under pressure. Her knee against mine should have meant nothing, just an accident, a shift in how we sat. But the silence that followed it, The silence that stretched and burned made it something else entirely. I didn't move. Neither did she. "You shouldn't," she whispered, her voice so low I almost thought I imagined it. I leaned in, just enough for her to hear me clearly. "Shouldn't what?" Her eyes darted to my mouth, then back up. "Say things like that. Look at me like that. Stay here like this." My chest tightened. I wanted to laugh, to ease the tension, but nothing about this felt like it could be softened. "And yet," I said quietly, "you asked me to." Her breath hitched. A small sound, almost nothing, but it felt like everything. The space between us shrank, not because either of us moved much, but because it felt like the room itself was closing in. My hand twitched on my knee. Hers curled into a fist against the cushion. "Do you know what you're doing?" she asked suddenly. Not cold, not angry, just desperate. "Do you?" I shot back, before I could stop myself. The words hung there, reckless and sharp, but she didn't flinch. She looked straight at me, eyes glassy now, something breaking behind them. And then, finally, she said it. "I'm not supposed to want this." The air left my lungs. Not because it was shocking, but because it was the first honest thing either of us had said since the faucet stopped dripping. I swallowed hard. "But you do." Her lips parted, then closed. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I felt myself leaning forward, not enough to touch her, but close enough that her perfume mixed with the faint trace of wine on her breath. My pulse thudded in my ears. Every thought screamed at me to stop, to pull back, to remember the rules we were already breaking by sitting this close. But I couldn't, and when my hand brushed against hers, just the lightest graze of skin against skin, she didn't pull away. Her fingers trembled, then stilled. We sat there like that, suspended in something too fragile to name, both of us waiting for the other to make it real. Finally, she whispered, "You don't know what this could cost me." Her words cut deep, but her hand stayed under mine. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that whatever it cost, I'd carry it. But my throat closed around the words. So instead, I just stared at her, caught in the raw, unguarded way she was staring at me. The world outside her apartment didn't exist. Her question, "Tell me, if I let you, would you stay?" was still in the air when I opened my mouth to answer. But before I could speak, she pulled her hand back, sharp, like she'd touched fire. The shift was jarring. One moment, we were teetering on the edge of something undeniable. The next, she was standing, pacing toward the window like she couldn't breathe. "I shouldn't have asked you that," she muttered. I sat forward, confused, restless. "Why? Because it's wrong? Or because you don't want me to?" She turned then, sharply, eyes blazing with something that wasn't anger but felt just as dangerous. "Because you remind me of someone." That stopped me cold. Her voice softened, but the words cut deeper. "You look so much like him. The way you stand. The way you—" She shook her head, gripping the edge of the curtain like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "It's unfair. To you. To me." I swallowed hard. "Like who?" For a long moment she didn't answer. Just silence. Heavy. Reluctant. Finally, she whispered, "My husband. My ex-husband. He left 3 years ago. And when you walked in tonight for a second, I thought I saw him." The air shifted. Everything I'd been feeling twisted into something sharper. Heavier. "I'm not him," I said firmly. "I'm me." Her eyes flicked to mine, searching, torn. "I know that. I know. But do you understand what this looks like? What it feels like? For me." I wanted to stand, to close the gap she'd opened, but my legs felt locked. Instead, I let my voice carry the weight I couldn't move. "I don't care what it looks like. I only care what it is." Her breath caught. Before either of us could say more, a knock rattled the door. Both our heads snapped toward it. She froze, lips parting, eyes wide. The knock came again, firmer this time. Her whole body stiffened. "It's my sister," she said quickly, too quickly. "She sometimes stops by when I don't answer her calls." I looked at her, at the panic just under the surface. "Do you want me to go?" Her jaw clenched. No, don't move. Just stay quiet. She walked to the door, smoothing her hair with trembling fingers before cracking it open just an inch. A muffled voice came through, her sister asking if she was all right. I'm fine, she said too brightly. Just tired. I'll call you tomorrow. A pause. Then retreating footsteps. Silence again. She shut the door and leaned against it, exhaling like she'd just run miles. Our eyes met across the room. Something had shifted. Not just tension now, but exposure. Ronis, you weren't supposed to hear that, she whispered. I rose slowly, the distance between us suddenly smaller than it had ever been. Maybe I was. Her words hit like a warning. If you stay tonight, it won't just be about you and me. It'll be about everything I've been trying to forget. For a long time, neither of us moved. The only sound was the faint hum of her old record player still spinning in the corner, needle tracing over silence. I swallowed hard. Then maybe you shouldn't ask me to. Her eyes lifted, sharp, almost wounded. Do you think I don't know that? Her voice cracked, and she looked away, pressing a hand to her temple like she could hold herself together by force. I stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until I was near enough that she could feel I wasn't leaving. So tell me, I said quietly, what do you want me to do? She let out a laugh, low and tired, but there was no humor in it. That's the problem. I don't know what I want. For years I've told myself I'm done with this, done with letting someone in, done with wanting. And then you show up, and suddenly I can't even hear myself think. I should have pulled back, should have given her space. But hearing her say it broke something in me too. Do you think it's easier for me? I asked, my voice unsteady. You're all I've thought about since the first time we spoke. And I keep telling myself it's wrong, that I should walk away. But I can't. I don't want to. Her breath caught. She looked at me then, fully, as though weighing every word. I don't want to be someone's mistake, she whispered. You're not, I said immediately. Too fast, too certain, but I meant it. We stood there, inches apart, everything raw and unguarded. And then her hand lifted, almost trembling, brushing the side of my face. A small, careful touch as though testing if I was really there. I leaned into it. That was all it took. The space between us collapsed. Not in a rush, not in some cinematic sweep, but in a slow, deliberate surrender. Her forehead rested against mine. And for a moment we didn't kiss, didn't speak, just breathed the same air, both of us on the edge. This is real, I murmured. Her hand slid down to my chest, gripping the fabric of my shirt. God help me, she whispered. I believe you. And then, finally, her lips met mine. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't practiced. It was desperate, trembling, raw. The kind of kiss that felt less like a beginning and more like a confession. When we finally broke apart, she didn't step away. Her eyes stayed closed, her breath uneven against my skin. This doesn't fix anything, she said, her voice barely steady. Her words stayed with me, more than the kiss itself. Then promise me, you won't run. I didn't answer right away. Couldn't. My chest was tight, my thoughts tangled. But her hand on me, steady, waiting, pulled the words out of me anyway. I promise. She opened her eyes, searching, as if testing whether I meant it. And for the first time that night, she let herself soften. The sharpness in her gaze eased, replaced by something fragile, almost fearful. We stayed like that for a long moment, breathing in sync, holding on not because it solved anything but because it finally admitted everything. When she finally pulled back, it wasn't rejection. It was steadiness, resolve. She sat beside me on the couch, close enough that our shoulders touched, and whispered, Do you realize what we've done? Yes, I said. And I'd do it again. Her laugh was quiet, broken at the edges. You're too young to know what that means. Maybe, I admitted. But I'm old enough to know I don't want to lose this. Not now. The room was still. The record player clicked as it reached the end. A small, hollow sound that reminded us both of time passing. She leaned back, eyes closed, as if weighing the weight of everything. Then, softer than I expected, she said, I thought my life was already written, that the best parts of it were over. I turned to her. And now, her eyes opened, glistening with something unguarded. Now, I'm not sure, but maybe that's the point. Maybe I don't have to know. For the first time all night, there was no fear in her tone, just acceptance. I reached for her hand again, not tentative this time, but certain. She didn't flinch. She let me hold it, fingers lacing with mine like it belonged there. And in that quiet, I realized it wasn't about age. It wasn't about rules or appearances or the past. It was about the moment. Two people who weren't supposed to collide, but did. And in the mess of it, in the breaking of every line, something real had formed. We didn't say much after that. Words weren't needed. The silence was different now. Not heavy, not suffocating, but full. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Her hand lingered on mine one last time, and she whispered, Come back tomorrow. I smiled, unable to stop it. For you always. And this time she didn't look away.